Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. NFL draft is this week. Depending on when you watch this video, maybe it's already occurred. You're late to the party. We are doing two Green Bay Packer mock draft videos this week. The first one that I'm doing right now involves no trades. The one we are doing later on in the week, probably coming out Tuesday, Wednesday, again, depending on when you watch this, will involve trades. So I went through. I just did it in one shot. I can't count how many times I've done a mock draft simulator for the Packers, really from like January up until now. But I did it one go around this time. I didn't want to redo it. I said, however the board falls, however things play out, that's what we're rolling with. What would I prefer to see? I would prefer to see what many of you probably want. I would love to see a world where Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona somehow magically falls to 23 or somehow is available at 16, 17, 18, 19, and Green Bay decides to pick up the phone and trade up to go get Tetairoa McMillan. I think he's that good. I think he is kind of cut from the same cloth of a Mike Evans, perhaps. Could potentially go as high as 5. I know everyone's predicting Jacksonville to go defense at number 5, but Tetairoa McMillan to go there. He could go, 12 to Dallas. I think almost everyone has Dallas taking Matthew Golden or Tetairoa McMillan, but I gave one shot. All the draft picks for Green Bay, so a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2 7s. No trades involved. This is how it played out. And this isn't going to be drawn out. It's not going to be like an hour-long video. We're going to go through the picks. I'm going to tell you why I chose who I chose, kind of how it stacked up with the board, the fit with Green Bay, other little tidbits and notes of that nature. All right, so Green Bay obviously holds the number 23 overall pick. This is our mock draft, all the picks, 7 rounds, involving no trades for the Green Bay Packers. So every pick, they are standing pat with where they are on the board. At number 23 overall in this mock draft, with what was available, again, and I'll go through that. First pick for Green Bay, I have them taking Donovan Ezeiruaku, the edge rusher out of Boston College. And for those who wanted a receiver, I will note, in this mock draft simulator, when I was doing it, not only was Tetairoa McMillan not on the board, not only had Matthew Golden already gone, but Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State was also gone. All 3, 30 visits for Green Bay, top 30 visits. All 3 off the board. At this point, I thought, probably a big stretch to take an Isaiah Bond from Texas, who was also a 30 visit for Green Bay. I did think about Luther Burden. I think Luther Burden is such a fascinating case. Receiver out of Missouri who could go in the first round, could go right around where Green Bay picks, but there hasn't been much buzz or really any linking between he and Green Bay. The Packers have had plenty of receivers in for 30 visits. We've seen them linked to a lot of receivers. Luther Burden is not one of them. An absolute stat monster at Missouri. He was a receiver that he has big playability. He has take the lid off the defense type speed. Missouri didn't really use him in that fashion often, not because he couldn't. Missouri just opted to really go with a path of, let's get the ball in Luther Burden's hands as quickly as possible and let him go to work. 75% of his catches were targeted within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage during his time at Missouri. So I guess I considered Luther Burden, but I thought, there's already 3 receivers off the board. We know we're going to address it at some point. I saw Donovan Ezeiruaku on the board from Boston College, and I just thought it made more sense. Incredibly productive pass rusher for BC in the ACC, 16.5 sacks last year, second in the nation, 21 tackles for loss, tied for 3rd in the country. We know Green Bay. I've mentioned this in recent videos the last couple of weeks, talking about draft philosophy. They don't always look at production as like the be-all, end-all. They'll go with someone that they are higher on, whether it's, for athletic gifts, talent, upside, how high the ceiling is, things of that nature, the size fit, what's the frame for a certain position. They'll go that way, and they'll do that early in a draft. We saw it with Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness, 2 examples I use, over players who, have a lot of production. I thought Ezeiruaku, he may not have the size, the exact frame that Green Bay would desire on the edge, but I just thought he checked so many other boxes. And we kind of buried the lead. Like, your defensive coordinator in Green Bay, Jeff Hafley, recruited and coached Donovan Ezeiruaku at Boston College. And so I wouldn't look at this situation and say, The frame might not be ideal for Green Bay. It's not like it's way off for what they typically prefer, right? And I wouldn't look at the fact that he didn't have a top 30 visit with Green Bay because Green Bay probably found out everything they needed to about Ezeraku from Jeff Hafley, who coached him at Boston College. We know there's a need, despite what Goody is saying. They're expecting big things from Lucas Van Ness. They're expecting Rashawn Gary to really help carry the flag, I guess, for the edge rushing group at a more consistent manner. Despite all of that, he's not going to show his hand. He's not going to, tilt his cards and show everyone what's going on. I believe he knows as much as everyone else does, or at least is suggesting that there is a need for Green Bay to add an edge rusher, and many wanted early on in the draft. And so I went with Ezeraku. I just thought too many things added up. And with how the board shaked out, McMillan, Golden, Abuka, all were off the board. Mykel Williams out of Georgia was also off the board. Otherwise, I probably would have gone that direction. I will say this. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M was on the board. He scares the hell out of me. The production's not there. Everything, like Goody did say at a presser on Monday. He was asked specifically about RAS scores again. He said Green Bay doesn't use RAS scores. They have their own methods and formulas for spitting out their numbers that they value, but they don't look at RAS scores, which is, not surprising, but it just is a massive coincidence that a lot of the players they end up drafting do have high RAS scores. Shamar Stewart had a 9.99 out of 10. He is a athletic freak, a physical marvel, all those, terms you want to use, but the production wasn't there. He only had 4.5 sacks in 3 years at Texas A&M. For whatever reason, just had a tough time getting all the way home to the quarterback or to the opposing quarterback. So Stewart was available. I went with Ezeraku. And again, top 3 receivers you probably want were all gone off the board. Mykel Williams out of Georgia was gone. So for me, it came down to Ezeraku and Stewart, and I went with the Boston College product, who Jeff Hafley has plenty of familiarity with. So that was pick number 123 overall. Mitch, I am on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciate all the support. Doing a Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft. All their picks. Not going to be too long-winded with it. Maybe some of these earlier picks, more analysis than the ones later on. And I'll tell you how the board broke down. Like I just told you, I took Ezeraku. Tet McMillan wasn't there. Golden wasn't there. Abuka wasn't even there. Mykel Williams from Georgia was gone. I'm not saying Ezeraku's an afterthought, but that's just how the board shook out. And that's why I took him first. Round 2 was a no-brainer for me. I was shocked to see it play out this way. And I actually started looking at mock drafts to see, does anyone have it going this way? And I found a couple who had this player falling in this general range, which again surprised me. You're probably not going to believe this one, but I'll post the graphic as we go along. Number 54 overall, the second-round pick, Maxwell Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky. There are mock drafts that have Green Bay taking him in the first round with the 23rd overall pick. You're talking about the fastest guy at the NFL Combine, a 4.28 second 40-yard dash. Many believe he's on the trajectory to being a clear-cut number 1 cornerback in the league. Green Bay loves its versatility, right? He can play man. He can play zone. He'll get in your face at the line of scrimmage. He's an absolute incredible playmaker. He had 6 interceptions during his time at Kentucky. He took 3 of them all the way back to the house for a pick 6. I love Maxwell Hairston. When I chose Ezeraku and I was looking at the big board of players available, I saw Hairston and I considered it. I genuinely considered Hairston at 23. I just personally went with Ezeraku, kind of for what I thought Green Bay might do and how the board would filter out in the second round. I did not expect to see Hairston at 54. I was even more surprised when I kind of took a look at some other mock drafts. I did not find one that had Hairston falling to 54 like this simulator did. But there was a general range of, 45, 48, 49, where it was the worst case outcome for the player for Hairston falling that far. But if he's there at 54, unless there's some huge red flags that Green Bay is aware of that nobody else is aware of, this would seem like the easiest pick in the world to me, especially considering many see him going in the first round. And again, some mocks have the Packers taking Hairston with the number 23 overall pick. You got to keep in mind, Jair Alexander's likely gone. Goody addressed it again on Monday with reporters, saying something to the tune of we'll see how it goes with the draft and then go from there. They're probably going to shop him around, try to trade him. sounds like a foregone conclusion, right? We've known this. I have lobbied for the case of, like, at this point, just I don't know if I did a video on it. I know I had an article, and it was, at this point, just keep Jair Alexander. I thought the good outweighed the bad at this point, even though there's an injury risk, even though it seems like you're at the point of no return. Like, just put the ego aside for both sides. Jair put the ego aside. The Packers put the ego aside and just figure something out. I thought it just made sense at this point. Green Bay's clearly not getting what they want in compensation for Jair. He's not going to get traded somewhere, it sounds like, and renegotiate a restructure on his contract. So I thought, even though it was a far-fetched idea, my premise was just keep Jair Alexander. It still sounds like that's not going to happen. I know they brought in Hobbs from Las Vegas. You have Keyshawn Nixon. You have Carrington Valentine. I am still of the belief that there is a serious question as to whether any of those three are a true number one cornerback. You're in a division with Justin Jefferson. You're in a division with DJ Moore. You're in a division with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, you need a top-tier cornerback to shut things down. Now, you have other help, right? You take an Ezeraku, who can get to the quarterback, who can disrupt things up front. That's going to take off a quarterback's timing, and that can disrupt things on the back end and help out a secondary. You have Xavier McKinney, an all-pro caliber safety. You have Evan Williams, who's really coming into his own after being a fourth-round pick out of Oregon. But I still believe Green Bay needs a top-tier corner, needs a number one, especially for the division they play in. Would I like to see that be Keyshawn Nixon or Hobbs, like in an ideal world? Yes, absolutely. I have my reservations about it. I'm willing to be proven wrong. You take a guy in Hairston, he's a plug-and-play, in my opinion. Is he an immediate number one corner atop the depth chart? Probably not. He's going to need room to grow. But at number 54 overall, this was about as clear-cut of a no-brainer, if he's there, that I could find. And so I had Green Bay taking Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback, out of Kentucky in round 2. Round 3, I didn't necessarily plan for it to be this way. Like, I could see a world where Green Bay goes offensive line maybe in round 2, depending on if someone falls. Simmons from Ohio State, I don't necessarily think he falls to the second round, but maybe a world in which he does because of the injury that he's coming off of with the torn patellar tendon. Round 3, again, it's another perceived area of need. I absolutely love the fit here. Took Torrey Horton, wide receiver out of Colorado State. And you can call it cherry picking because the first 3 picks I took edge rusher, corner, and wide receiver. And in all these offseason videos, and I'm sure with other Packers content creators that you subscribe to, follow, read along with, they have probably also mentioned the areas of need for Green Bay are edge rusher, cornerback, wide receiver. Not in that order necessarily, but those are the 3 that everyone's kind of swirling and circulating around. And it just so happened that I had them going edge rusher, corner, and now wide receiver with Torrey Horton at number 87 overall. I don't think you can debate the value with the last 2 picks. I think if you want to argue, hey, 23 might be a little early for Donovan Ezeraku, I'd hear you out. You can't possibly convince me Hairston at number 54 is a reach, that there isn't real good value at getting him there. And I would say the same for Torrey Horton. I think back end of round 3, I think you're getting great value with what he brings to the table at the wide receiver position. Green Bay used a top 30 visit on him. Last year, for reference, 3 of the draft picks they took, Edgerrin Cooper was the first, round 2 out of Texas A&M. Jordan Morgan was not a top 30 visit guy. I'm trying to think. Was it Hopper and Oladapo, I think? Those were the 3 30 visits for Green Bay that they ended up drafting. Hairston was not a 30 visit. Ezeraku was not a 30 visit. Doesn't mean, the end of the world. Horton, they did use a top 30 visit on. Back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons in 2022 and 2023. Led the Mountain West in receptions in 2023. Led him in yards the year prior to that. Like, this dude, early on in his career, was a constant top priority for defenses. Like, when teams were going to prepare for Colorado State, it was, we got to stop Torrey Horton. Or we got to find a way to contain Torrey Horton. And the dude still balled out, like, week in, week out, every single Saturday. A knee injury might I don't want to say scare away, but a knee injury might raise some concerns for some teams. There was a lot of, I guess just there wasn't a lot of information surrounding the knee injury that ended Horton's 2024 season. All we know is that it required surgery that, again, ended his 2024 campaign pretty prematurely. He was like a day 2 slam dunk pick entering this year. before the knee injury, and now he's kind of a day 2 fringe guy. He has seemingly put a lot of that to rest. I mean, the pro day was hard for me to ignore. I do believe I mentioned this in a previous video with Torrey Horton. It was snowing on his pro day at Colorado State, and I couldn't help but think, you're not actively searching for players in the draft that can play in adverse weather conditions that are okay with the cold climate. But watching Torrey Horton literally in the snow on his pro day, I was like, yeah, this makes too much sense. He said his knee is fine. It's all back to 100%. It's good to go. Again, to me, he was a day 2 slam dunk pick before the knee injury in 2024, entering last year. That's kind of where he was filtering into. Playing in the conditions obviously isn't a problem. I love the upside with Horton by every account, every metric, every simulation, any story, article you read about, any podcast you listen to. Torrey Horton's just one of those dudes that it is hard to envision him not being a productive wide receiver in the NFL. Is he ever going to be a true bona fide alpha number 1 wideout? I don't know. I think that would take a lot. That might be a little bit of a stretch. But can Torrey Horton be a number 2 wide receiver on a depth chart with a really good core? I think he could elevate to that. But regardless of, how high the ceiling is, how high the floor is with Torrey Horton, it is hard to envision him just being someone who flakes out in the NFL. The production is there, the energy is there, the effort's always there, the hands are there. It's just that knee injury that I think brought about some uncertainty, but it's been cleared up. I think in large part based off what you saw with his pro day. So I love the upside with Torrey Horton. Green Bay's wide receiver room, you can bring up 2025. You can really, really, really zoom in and look at 2025 and say they don't have Christian Watson, torn ACL week 18 against Chicago. He's going to miss a large portion of the year. None of these guys took over as a true number 1 last year. They signed McCole Hardman. For me, that doesn't move the needle. Green Bay needs help at wide receiver. If you look at this on a larger scale, on a larger level, Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson are free agents after this year. Neither has an extension in place right now. We don't know if that's going to happen. Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks are extension eligible next offseason and will be entering the final year of their rookie deals. This wide receiver room could look very, very different in just 2 years down the road. You have to address things before it becomes a problem. So I agree with a lot of people that, hey, right now there's a need at wide receiver. They don't have a stud. They don't have a bona fide number 1. I don't know if Torrey Horton is that. I certainly don't think right away, right out of the chute, right from the jump, he's that for Green Bay or whoever drafts him. Maybe he evolves or develops into that. But Green Bay needs production. They need bodies in that room because we don't know what it's going to look like a couple years from now. Does anyone honestly believe Doubs, Watson, Reed, and Wicks are all 4 going to be here 3 years from now? It's unrealistic to expect that. I like when Goody doubles up at a position in the draft. I have no problem with it. The issue arises when you do it like he did, back-to-back drafts, and now you have 4 wide receivers who are all due their next contract in a 2-year window, and you have nothing worked out yet, and that's fine. Green Bay can take their time. They can evaluate everything they need to, but let's call a spade a spade. Out of that group of 4, not all 4 are going to be here in 2 or 3 years. It's just unrealistic to expect that. Doubs, Watson, Reed, and Wicks will all 4 be in the league in 2 or 3 years, barring something crazy like the rug getting pulled out from under them in their career. But all 4 are probably not going to be Green Bay Packers in 2 or 3 years. It's just the nature of the beast. And so Green Bay's going to have to reload in some facet. I like Torrey Horton as a guy who's just going to be super productive. He's going to be productive. And you don't have any worries that you're going to take him and it's, no offense, it's going to be like an Amari Rodgers. I don't see that with Torrey Horton. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Packers mock draft. 7-round mock draft. We're on to round 4. Pick number 124. I went with Elijah Roberts, defensive. I label him as a defensive lineman, although it's likely defensive end, out of SMU. Another 30-visit guy. I paused on labeling him a defensive end solely, an edge rusher, because I think he does have some versatility. You can plug him in at defensive end. That's primarily where he was at in college at SMU. He started his career at Miami before spending his last 2 years. What are they? The SMU Mustangs, I think. He has the frame, though, and the size. He's 6'4", 285 pounds. I don't know if it would work. If you wanted to try Elijah Roberts as a 3 technique on the interior of your defensive line, it's a size thing. He's 6'4", 285 pounds. And not in a bad way when I say this. His weight is elevated throughout his college career. Now, again, not in a bad way. I think if you wanted to try him on the interior defensive line as a 3 technique, you could at least float the idea out there. Maybe you try it in training camp or in the preseason and see how it looks. We know Green Bay loves versatility. Like, they aren't even going to deny that. And I do think there's a potential that, hey, maybe if it doesn't work out for Roberts at defensive end, it could work out on the interior of the defensive line, and there's a sneaky need for it on the interior. TJ Slayton's gone. Goody did say Monday Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker, they believe will be back, whether it's contract extensions or just picking up the 5th-year option for now. So it kind of sounds like Wyatt's going to be there. Kenny Clark is still there. But outside of that, you certainly have some questions, and I just think Roberts kind of, at pick number 124, again, I'll use that word, there's some value there. There's versatility there. I'll ask the question, like, is he a guy that when you're in your base defense, he's on the field, or is he more situational? I think that's the big question. Like, some of the numbers and the production that he produced at SMU in his 2 years with them, and this most recent year in the ACC, so you're talking power conference football, I think if you just look at the box scores and the numbers, some snap counts, you'd be like, oh, yeah, he can, 3-down guy. But I have some doubts about that. But even if he's a situational player to like start, he definitely would be situational for Green Bay to start his career. Like, he's not coming in and taking over the gig of, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness. In this case, I also have them taking as a rock in round 1. That's not happening. He's not taking over for Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark. So he'd be situational from the start. But as time goes on, if he develops into like a pretty good player, let's just say a pretty good player, in your base defense, is he always out there? Or is he still kind of situational? That's a question I have with Elijah Roberts, and that's potentially maybe what other teams are asking, which is why he's, at least in this case, falling to round 4 and pick number 124 overall. Number 159 overall, round 5. These next 2 you're just going to have to hear me out a little bit, and then this one will make sense, I think. The next one, you'll have to just hear me out a little bit more, right? Quinn Ewers, quarterback out of Texas. And some of you might be like, what the hell? Round 5, I have Green Bay taking Quinn Ewers, quarterback Texas. That's just kind of the board fell out a little bit. I am absolutely convinced Green Bay's drafting a quarterback this year, and there's 2 reasons for that, and not with a premier pick. If Jackson Dart's on the board at 23, Green Bay's not taking Jackson Dart. If Shedeur Sanders is somehow there, they're not taking Shedeur Sanders. They're not trading back up late in round 1 or early round 2 to take Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. It's not happening. They're not using a premier pick on a quarterback. But round 5, you're kind of getting into the nitty-gritty, the later portions of the draft. Quinn Ewers is there. I am convinced Green Bay is drafting a quarterback this year. They have drafted one in each of the last 2 drafts. Michael Pratt out of Tulane in the 7th round last year. The year before that, Sean Clifford in the 5th round. So you already had Jordan Love stapled in as your starter. You had passed the torch from Rodgers to Love, and you still went out and drafted Sean Clifford in the 5th round. And it wasn't... Let me actually start with this. They've drafted a quarterback in each of the last 2 drafts. And Goody has been on record saying he wants Green Bay to get back to drafting and develop quarterbacks on a regular basis. Here's why it makes all the sense in the world, if you even want to push that note aside from Goody. Malik Willis and Sean Clifford are in contract years. I believe Malik Willis, and it was a small sample size last year, but in 2 starts and heavy playing time in 2 other games, showed enough. Whether you believe it, I believe it, anyone believes it, I think people do in the NFL. In front offices and in those circles. I believe Malik Willis wants a chance at earning a starting gig somewhere after 2025. And I think he's earned that right. And again, it was a small sample size, but he was never given a fair shake in Tennessee, and he didn't have much stability around him. It wasn't really a Malik Willis issue. It was a Tennessee Titans issue. They funneled in quarterbacks left and right the last few years after, slowly moving on from the Ryan Tannehill era. it wasn't a Malik Willis issue, and that really came to the light with what we saw with him in Green Bay in those 2 starts, and then heavy playing time in Jacksonville, and then in the game against the Bears in Week 18. I think Malik Willis, and he deserves this, will want a chance to. He's kind of rejuvenated his career in Green Bay last year with that those spot starts with the injury to Jordan Love, or injuries, and I think that's what he'll pursue after this year. Sean Clifford, on the other hand, he had a chance to be the backup quarterback. Malik Willis isn't in Green Bay right now if Sean Clifford grabbed onto the role and ran with it. The only reason Willis was brought in is because Green Bay looked around and they're like, Clifford hasn't really shown us enough. Pratt hasn't shown us enough. We need to figure something out. And so they pivot and they go to Malik Willis, which, of course, you give up a 7th-round pick for him. It worked out swimmingly for Green Bay. Again, ideal world is Malik Willis is your backup quarterback for the next 6, 7, 8 years. That's not fair to Willis, though, who has shown that there might be a little bit more in the tank than what was initially thought after, again, just not so good, 2-3 years with Tennessee. So I see Willis exploring another opportunity after this year elsewhere, because obviously, it's not going to be in Green Bay. Like, Jordan Love's your starter. Jordan Love is your starting quarterback. You already forked over the contract for it. Ewers is an intriguing prospect for a variety of reasons. He was the number 1 overall prospect in his class coming out of high school. He could go round 3. I've seen that. I've seen later on in round 5 for Ewers. So he is, you talk about like a wide scope. This dude could go early, mid round 3. He could go late round 5, maybe round 6. I mean, it gets pretty volatile there with quarterbacks once you're out of those main tiers in the draft, where it can get pretty crazy. Like, Green Bay took Clifford in the 5th round, and almost every single grading system I saw had Clifford as 7th rounder to undrafted. And Green Bay took him in the 5th round. Obviously, that has yet to work out and probably won't work out. But they didn't need to take Clifford, but they wanted to draft and develop. They wanted to get a steady backup quarterback in there. That's what Goody's trying to go back to. With Ewers, I mean, you've seen the good, and you've seen it in big games. Games against Georgia, games against Michigan. When he's in rhythm, it looks like the game just comes so easily to him. He has multiple arm slots that he can throw from, plays with a lot of confidence. I think he needs to work on reading a defense, not just going with the first read and then sort of like, oh gosh, what the hell do I do now? And sort of like pre-snap diagnosing a defense, because I thought coverages, more dynamic coverages, pre-snap coverages could fool him if they were disguises. So obviously things to work on. Like, there's a reason he would be going in round 5. There's a reason he was available at number 159 when I was doing this mock draft simulator, and it's a draft and development option for a reason. For Green Bay, it checks 2 boxes. Goody has said on record he wants to get back to drafting and developing quarterbacks on a more regular basis. Has nothing to do with Jordan Love. Has absolutely nothing to do with that. Not draft and develop with the idea of like, this is the next superstar quarterback in the NFL. Draft and develop like guys that can serve as a backup quarterback on your team, and maybe like a Malik Willis, if there is an opportunity to spot start and you flourish, then you do move on somewhere else and get an opportunity on a bigger role and a bigger scale. And it checks the second box of, again, next year, backup quarterback, Malik Willis, Sean Clifford, both entering the last years of their deals. There's no guarantee either of them are back, so I thought it checked a couple of boxes. We got 3 picks left. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. This one, again, probably have to hear me out a little bit. Pick number 198 overall, round 6. I went Luke Lachey, tight end out of Iowa. I have a soft spot for Iowa tight ends. I can't help it. Like, it's become a factory for, like, they call Iowa tight end U, and rightfully so. I know some of you are going to be scratching your heads on this one specifically, because Tucker Kraft is on the path to being an alpha tight end. He is on the right trajectory. He's an ascending player. He's only going to be in his 3rd year, and he has shown as a run blocker. He is more than willing. He has shown as a pass catcher. He's reliable. He's a yak monster at the tight end position, and he's got great hands, and he's been available for you. The best ability sometimes is availability. He has been what Luke Musgrave hasn't been. It's not Musgrave's fault, but Musgrave's had 2 brutal injuries. We'll get to him in a minute. This selection that I made of Luke Lachey in the 6th round has nothing to do with Tucker Kraft. It has nothing to do with Green Bay saying, man, we really need a tight end. Again, these are value picks. These are picks, draft, develop options. You're talking 6th round, pick number 198 overall. Here's why I did it. There isn't a question about who the top dog is in the tight end room for Green Bay, and hopefully for the long haul. You hope to have a guy like Tucker Kraft for as long as George Kittle, another Iowa tight end, has been in San Francisco, for as long as Sam Laporta will probably be in Detroit, another Iowa tight end. That's the goal with Tucker Kraft. And, for both sides, you would hope. And he has all the makings of being a number one. The questions for me are with Luke Musgrave. This is a huge, huge year for Musgrave. I'm sure I'll have other videos in the offseason about this. Entering year 3, Musgrave saw his rookie season cut short with, a lacerated spleen, was it? What was it? Lacerated spleen, I think. And then you saw torn ligaments in the ankle surgery in year 2, and that took a big chunk out of his year 2 season. He's a true vertical threat. He's not like a guy you line up as, hey, this is our guy that's, really going to handle things in the run blocking game. He's willing to do that, but Green Bay drafted him in the second round out of Oregon State to be a vertical threat, to be more involved in the passing game. He just hasn't been on the field. And again, you feel for the dude, but if in year 3, either the production isn't there, the reps are, but the production doesn't show up for Musgrave, or he succumbs to another, brutal injury, I'll say, you have to start at least wondering, is his future in Green Bay? Because then you'd be talking 3 years to start his career with 3 big-time injuries. It wasn't like, he tweaked his hammy and missed a game or 2. Like, you're talking about big-time injury rookie season, ankle surgery year 2. He is missing extended periods of time. And so if it happens again in year 3, again, it's not his fault, but you would have to start bringing dialogue to the table that kind of circulates around the idea of, is his future in Green Bay? And Matt LaFleur, if he had his way, would probably want to run more 12 personnel, right? And the idea when you took Luke Musgrave in round 2 and then Tucker Kraft in round 3 of the same draft was to have it be those two. Green Bay for so long tried to do placeholders and fillers at tight end, good tight ends, but not long-term solutions. I'm talking, Jared Cook was here for 1 year, Jimmy Graham for a couple of years, Martellus Bennett, guys who just kind of filled the void for the time being. And, Martellus Bennett was here for a few years, but was never really a number 1 tight end, going to chew up a lot of targets, receptions. That was just, he was like a 6th offensive lineman out on the field for Green Bay when he was out there for the Packers. Lachey, again, you're talking about pick number 198. It's not necessarily an instant impact guy, but he gives you all the effort. He is a good pass catcher. He is a good run blocker. Doesn't necessarily fly off the screen when you're watching him. Iowa's become a factory for tight ends. I mentioned some of the names, Kittle, Laporta, Noah Fant. The list keeps going on. If you want to go way back, Dallas Clark for the Indianapolis Colts. Lachey this late in the draft is a pick where you feel certain he makes the roster, and you feel there's a chance that he can develop into some sort of role in the offense. Maybe he can play teams. Green Bay was 29th in pass attempts per game last year, and they didn't, so far, address the wide receiver position. And a lot of the reasons they were 29th in pass attempts, a lot of it you can look at and say Josh Jacobs was a monster. Josh Jacobs was a top 3, top 4 running back in the NFL last year. I think you put Saquon, Derrick Henry out of them after that. You could probably put Josh Jacobs in there. Top 3, top 4 running back. He was a bell cow back. They leaned on him heavily. He produced consistently, week in, week out. The other part of being 29th in pass attempts per game last year was there was no rhythm. There was no consistency with the passing game. Love missed some time with injuries. At other times, even when he was playing, looked less than 100%. Another part of that is none of these receivers really took off like we thought they might. And there were problems with separation, getting constant separation as the year carried on. There were big-time problems with drops with Jaden Reed and Ontavian Wicks. All signs right now point towards Green Bay being a heavy run team again in 2025. And if that's the case, why not scoop up another tight end? Again, Lachey is a guy that you feel not all 6th-round picks are making a roster. Newsflash. He's a guy that you feel really, really good about making the roster at a minimum. Maybe he can have a team's impact early on. And then you just see how far he can go, how high he can rise, sort of, as you bring him along. 2 7th-round picks. We'll wrap them up somewhat quickly. Number 237 overall, I took Michael Robinson, cornerback out of Tulane. 30 visit guy, fast 40 time. Could go undrafted. I had Green Bay scooping him up. A little on the smaller side for them, 5'10". It's a 7th round pick. It's a player that he got better each year. And I think if you can get a guy in the 7th round who consistently showed you he can get better and better and better, obviously he's leveling up here. You're talking going from college to the NFL. But keep in mind, Micah Robinson played 4 years in the FCS at Furman and then went FBS with Tulane and still got better. You know, his 1 year at Tulane this past year was better than his last year at Furman. And that was going from the FCS to the FBS. So now he's going from college football to the NFL. So it's a huge step up. But I like a guy that is showing you he's getting better and better and better. Like, he hasn't, plateaued. He hasn't leveled out. And it's like, okay, this is kind of who he is. Like, I don't know. Is Micah Robinson ever going to be a shutdown, lockdown number one corner? Probably not. But could he have a role on this team down the road? Sure, maybe. Again, we don't know because he just keeps getting better and better and better. And I think if you can get a guy like that at corner in the 7th round, like, why not? I've read so many articles on him making the selection in the lead up to the draft because he was a 30 visit guy for the Packers. There is a sense like the best is yet to be seen with him, and he's still kind of figuring out his game and elevating along the way. And we know Goody. I took a cornerback in round 2 with Hairston, and this is a cornerback in round 7. Goody has no problem doubling up. Doesn't matter the position. Wide receiver, tight end, we've seen it. Cornerback here. And then the last pick. This was kind of a personal preference pick more than what Green Bay might do, although who knows. Last pick, number 250 overall. I took Esa Pole, offensive tackle out of Washington State. I did a video that had Pole in it. I think it was last week. I may have reached here. He could go undrafted. I took him anyways. I want to see Esa Pole in a Packers uniform. Remember me saying this. Esa Pole, offensive tackle, Washington State. When Saturday rolls around and it's the real grinded out time of the NFL draft, all these compensatory picks taking place, and each round seemingly has like 50 picks, and we're into round 6 and round 7's dragging along. Just remember the name Esa Pole, and if the Packers don't draft him and nobody drafts him, remember the name Esa Pole anyways as an undrafted free agent. I don't know why. I just have a feeling he's a Green Bay guy. He ends up in Green Bay. I talked about his story in a video last week. Incredible story. Like, this is a dude that's just scratching the surface. Like, he just started playing football a few years ago. His mom didn't want him playing football. She didn't like the contact to the head portion of it. His brother played at Washington State. I think it was 2011 to 2015, was a productive defensive lineman. He ended up being able to kind of talk his mom into playing, but she said, you can't be a defensive lineman, but his frame, his size, had lineman written all over it, so he decides to play as an offensive lineman, as an offensive tackle. He is a raw talent in the sense that at this point, he kind of just uses his frame and his sheer strength to sort of negate momentum from pass rushers, but it works for him. He projects as a left tackle. There's not much wiggle room for that. Green Bay used a 30 visit on him. They used a 30 visit on a lot of guys projected to go around 7. And if you look at Green Bay's tackle spot, left tackle spot, Rasheed Walker contract year, open competition with him and Jordan Morgan. If Rasheed Walker walks, no pun intended, next year, and then Jordan Morgan doesn't work out at left tackle, you have a question mark there. Am I saying that Pole is a guy that you can plug right in? Not necessarily. Is he a project? Absolutely. But the more swings you take at it, the more chances you have to get it right. Again, there is a level of uncertainty at left tackle moving ahead for Green Bay. Maybe not in 2025. There's going to be a competition. So that brings about some uncertainty, right? But beyond that, is Walker going to be back in Green Bay? Zach Tom's probably going to get that contract extension. What do they do with Sean Ryan at right guard? Jordan Morgan, is he going to elevate? He's going to be good enough to win the job over Walker this year? Or do they move him back to guard at some point at right guard where they tried him out as a rookie? You can't have questions at left tackle. You're protecting the blind side of your quarterback, assuming it's a right-handed quarterback. Pole is a project. Wouldn't need to be a day one guy for Green Bay. He's a guy, just get him in the building. Get him in the building and milk out everything he possibly can with his talent and his production and his upside. I love the story. I like the fit with Green Bay. You listen to him talk. He feels like a Green Bay guy. Esa Pole was the 7th round pick. So real quickly again, went Donovan Ezaraku, edge rusher, round 1. Maxwell Hairston, cornerback, round 2. Torrey Horton, wide receiver, round 3. Elijah Roberts, defensive lineman, round 4. Quinn Ewers, quarterback out of Texas, round 5. Luke Lachey, tight end out of Iowa, round 6. Round 7, 2 picks. Micah Robinson, cornerback out of Tulane. Esa Pole, offensive tackle out of Washington State. Let me know what you think. Again, this is just how the mock draft simulator played out. This was not me saying, hey, Green Bay has pick number 23. Everyone's available. Here's what I'm going with. No, this was how the simulator played out, what I went with. I'm going to do one more version of a mock draft, but it's going to involve trades for the Packers, so obviously more wiggle room. Let me know what you think. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Always, always, always appreciate all the support. We'll see you next time.